Got this.
That's right.
All right, y'all are live.
Hello again. Hopefully the adventure of the 7 Sergeis is done.
Okay, so you heard that too. It wasn't just...
And we're back. It's just us. So in case you couldn't hear me over the mob of me, I'm literary manager and dramaturg of Conch Shell Productions. So a big thank you to all these amazing artists, our incredible technical team who is showing how incredible they are during this take back. And of course, to everybody who's tuning in and watching and is sticking around for this conversation. So as we chat, post your comments, we'll bring them into the conversation. I'm going to introduce Cynthia, and then she's going to lead the discussion with these incredible artists whose work we just saw. So Cynthia Robinson is a playwright, producer, and educator. Her previous works include Dancing on Eggshells, Piola's Passing, When Night Falls, Gold Star Mother, Ascension, Thunder, a musical memoir, Nightfall, Roman Love, and Freedom Summer. So just some of the awards and honors she's gotten include institutions such as Rivers Writers Unit at the Lark, Quicksilver Theater Company, which is my familiar stomping grounds, a special place for them, Rising Circle Theater Collective, Ink Tank Residency, Black and Latino Playwrights Conference, Westchester Community College Foundation Faculty Excellence Award for Scholarship, State University New York Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Scholarship and Creative Activities, and she is New York University's inaugural Calvin B. Grimes Scholar in Residence. And the real fun stuff, she is anthologized in numerous publications, co-director of the excellent The Fire, This Time New Works Lab, and a member both of the League of Professional Theater Women and the Dramatists Guild of America. And so, along with, I welcome Cynthia. I thank you for leading this conversation with us.
Thank you, I'm excited.
And I think at this point, we are going to ask our fellow artists to turn their cameras on. We'll pull them in, make sure their streams are off.
Okay.
And then the floor, Cynthia, is yours.
Is everybody there?
Or it's just us.
Oh, it's just us.
Here they come.
Here comes the avalanche.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
I want to say bravo, brava. Thank you so much for lightening my mood on a Friday night in the middle of all this madness.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really great to just take in these stories and to laugh and to, kind of go, So I have a couple of questions that we could go all night with questions for these people, by the way. So they were just so amazing. But I'm going to narrow it down. And actually, these questions, I think everyone can weigh in. So should we start with, I married a Black Republican? Yeah. I just like saying that. I married a Black Republican. I didn't marry a Black Republican, but I like that. So obviously, this play is timely as we're in the 2020 presidential election. How does this piece speak to the polarization in this country? And anybody can answer that. Assuming, and feel free to say you don't think this country is there's any polarization going on.
Blasphemy.
I'll start. This country's always been polarized, but this piece is specific to this here and now because it was really hard. It is always hard for me to avoid the here and now because it's constantly in our faces because I'm home all the time and I can't escape it. And it harks back to the Civil War, right? You had families that were split up because one person believed in the Confederacy and the other person believed in the Union. And right now, so many people are divided on party lines and forgetting the humanity. And I just find it hilarious. I just find it hilarious how we keep on repeating this proclivity of forgetting spirit and just focusing on things, the trappings of party affiliation. And it's so, yeah. In answer to your question, I do believe we are polarized, and it's just a part of the human psyche, but especially at this time in the United States. And I'm going to pass it on to our director and our actors. Come on, y'all.
I think I want to hear from Tristan.
I do too.
Tristan is doing like the Jew with the go out and vote and the
She's
Biden Harrisness. Like she's
Yeah.
campaigning. Like I want to hear from her.
She was like made for this role. Oh, your mic just went off.
You got me now?
Yeah, we got you now.
There we are. Well, thank you. I mean, I'm glad I got to play this part and explore what it might be like to accidentally marry a Republican, which is a horrific thought for me and for Grace. Because I know for myself, I tend to not really even, talking about being polarized, I tend to not really have Republican friends either. And so I was canvassing, like Grace for the primaries and, having, the same conversations Grace was having on the phone and sort of, calling people who were undecided and stuff like that and having, sort of these really intense and tough conversations to have. So one thing I definitely appreciate about this play is I think it's always amazing, and theater and film and television really does this, is it brings a humorous lens to something that is very real. And I think this play does this. I think Magaly does it geniusly. There's moments where you laugh and you're like, her husband's tied up, but then there's moments like, this is real. There are Republicans, there are people who are undecided right now, and they're walking on the same planet we're walking on. So I think I think this play is great in the fact that it's like, let's have these conversations. Let's start talking about that. We share the planet with other people who might feel a little different than you do, or than I do. I should say for myself.
I think it's really interesting that you said, thank you for that, that you said that you don't have friends who are Black Republicans, because in the play, she doesn't know. So how do you know?
Oh.
I mean, you don't have to answer that, but like, that's one of the questions of the play that I think is really quite interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll go. Like, so the thing is, I actually have a friend, and they've been my friend for like a lot of years. Let's put it that way. And he is Black, gay, and a Republican. And he's also an immigrant. And I'm just like, let's no, like, just no.
Yeah, there are a lot of conversations that right?
Because I think what has happened is the pandemic, and this is why this play was so on point for me when I read it. Like I was, keeling over. I thought it was hilarious because it is that we've been bottled up for like 7 months, right? So issues that we normally wouldn't talk about have just like come out because all we have time to do now is Zoom with everybody, talk with everybody, FaceTime with everybody. And everybody, because we're kind of alone and we're in our aloneness, we keep checking in on each other. And so I find I talk to friends a lot more now than I would have in the past. And, it is trying to, I think Magaly, when we're talking about it today, it's you determine who you want to keep in your life. You have to make that assessment and you have to kind of accommodate them or figure out a way to accommodate them. And so I literally, when Black Lives Matter, flared up again at the beginning of the pandemic, and the whole situation with George Floyd and then Breonna Taylor, all of that flared up. My friend calls me and he's like, hey, what's going on? And he's chatting, and then he starts to talk about Black Lives Matter. And it's not in the way I want him to talk about it. And I'm just like, 6'5" Black gay man. Like, just shut up. Just don't even. I was like, you know what, but I just have an opinion. I said, that opinion, I can't hear. I can't hear it. Let's not talk. And we had to shut down that conversation. And so now we don't talk about politics. We don't talk about those kind of things. But in all the years that we've known each other, that's never come up. We've never talked about it. But this pandemic put us in proximity, and, Black Lives Matter. And then, Cheeto going on like around complete 7 months. And it's just, the whole thing just comes, and how you have to figure out a way to now. And I think, that's what I thought was cool in this piece is, when Jacques Guyviaud came in as her brother, and I'm like, look, you need to put some perspective in it. You need to lean into some perspective and Magaly, we need non-pandemic our brain in order to move forward. And I thought,
Magaly to the guy. And I think we can fall into this perception that it's like, at least that's how I grew up. When I was a little kid, I thought Democrats are good, Republicans are bad. I'm not saying that for the record, but that's what I thought as a young person. I didn't quite understand the parties. I didn't even know what being an independent meant. I thought it was two sides and that's it. And one was right for me and one wasn't. And I think Magaly, and when Jacques comes, and Jacques, you should speak to this too. I think that's the light he brings to the play too, is Al is a good guy. And like Magaly said, maybe we need to have a conversation instead of tying them up for 12 days.
I mean, tying up is not such a bad thing as we
right.
But, well,
he said the safe word. He said the safe word.
Speaking about who being selective about who we have in our lives, right? This is very interesting. This is what being pandemic up has made us think about that and be more mindful about who do we want to keep in our lives? Who do we want? Because the fact of the matter is we can stay in touch with whomever we want to. But I'm following up on that. In your imaginations, what happens with Grace and Al after the play ends? It's very interesting. You mentioned that we're characterizing Al as a good guy, and all of this has happened. And what do you think happens when she gets up with the glasses? I mean, is Al really as accommodating as we think he's going to be? In your imagination, what happens? Maybe, I don't know. I was really curious about that. I was imagining Al being pretty beside himself, but let's see. I don't know. What do you think?
I know what I think, but I'm not going to say it because
let's see
product of my imagination.
Then the writer,
everyone should say what they want.
Things. Yeah, I mean,
what do you think, Tanya and Jarvis?
Yeah,
what do you think?
I mean, and try to pull in what you think about. This is sort of what's wonderful about this play. Again, it's timely and it's got these real world relationships, real world issues. Think about your own friends and family. I mean, really, what do you think could realistically happen here? It's almost like giving Al a voice. It was so wonderfully written. I wanted to hear from Al other than the knocking on the, I just had such an imagination.
He does have a gag on, so.
I want to hear what happened, what he says when she walks in that bathroom.
Should I share? I mean, I think other people should too. This should be open floor, but I think in my mind, I think I untie him and we have wine and I apologize and say, let's start it over. I am a Democrat, a proud one. And if you're going to be a Republican, you're a Republican that I love, and we're going to have to find a way to do this together. Cheeto. No, I'm just kidding. All right, someone else.
So if you say that, what does he say? Then what happens? I can't help it. The play
Tanya has her hand up. Look at her. Look at her. Everybody's like, I have an idea. I have an idea.
I was and crack. And they won't admit it. They're not watching this. But I think there was a turning point where, there was the Republican Party really wanted him to go to Washington, and I think there was a come to Jesus between my parents. They never have talked about it, but my dad's now an independent. Because that was never going to happen. I think there was going to be like, I'm going to divorce you. If you want to do that, I'm going to divorce you, and that's it. So, with this play, I identify and, seeing it, I'm just like, at some point is how do you choose love when you are on two different sides? How do you choose it? And do you choose it? Yeah. And I think that's, I'm looking at you at the end of your play as like, that's where you like, do you choose? Do you not choose? Keep him there for 5 days? I don't know.
That's one of the wonderful sub questions of the play, right? About what happens when everybody's full disclosure about who they are. And in particular, it could be friendships, it could be a romantic relationship, it could be familiar relationships. What do you choose? I would say that even if you don't choose, you're still choosing.
Yeah.
So, so I think that even though it's like funny, but there is this sort of like, once you've put it all out there of like, this is who I am and this is who you are, and we've got to do something. But another choice is we could just be who we are. Can people live together in relationships and not be politically on the same page? We don't have to answer that because we could go on all night. But I mean, I think that's, for me, that was such an interesting sub question.
Well, that's the heart and soul of comedy, right? People don't change. Comedy is an observation of how people don't change.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, but I believed in unicorns and rainbows and butterflies, and so I think she went in there, and Al is pissed when she explains, and he's angry. But over the last 7 months, he registered like a long time ago. And so that's why his registration card says 12 days. He stopped calling his friends during the pandemic because they weren't wearing masks. He cut out a lot of ties during the pandemic because of opinions. So and then he watched her doing the whole canvassing sitch. So I think he may have been converted to a Democrat or is on his way to doing it. And I think she can clean him up and in the next hour and a half get him into a polling station to vote Biden-Harris. I think that unicorns and rainbows, that's me, that's what happens.
I want to second that. I want to say that, but before they leave, they don't leave the room for like 3 days because they discover some new stuff. And it gets wild in there.
I agree. I like that.
So I'm going to. So
they relieve tension and all that. Sorry, Cynthia. It gets wild.
I think it was the way Tristan held those goblets. When you picked up those goblets, I was like, it's gonna work out.
Yeah.
I just had a feeling you'd have control and imagination, and he just go with you.
Right.
Well, I'd love to hear what the writer thinks. I just want to say before you say anything, though, this would be a wonderful exercise. I teach creative writing, and this would be a wonderful creative writing exercise. What happens next? And then it would be a wonderful sort of engagement about why do you think that? And then you could sort of bring in all that's going on in the world. So I just think that would be, continue the story is always really, really cool. But Magaly, what do you think in your mind? I'm sure you know more than we do, right?
Well, the final line is from anchorwoman Carrie Shaw about how we're not going to have results tomorrow. And so that was the ultimate cliffhanger. Because as she's walking down the hall, she hears it. And she's once again conflicted. And so the conflict, the back and forth conflict of does love win over country? Does love win over country? Becomes, the ultimate hump for them to get over as a couple, right? And that's an interesting dynamic, the whole party affiliation defining identity, country loyalty, nationalism, party affiliation creating fervor. That's just source for comedy for me, because in the end we all die, and all that was for naught. So for me, the story keeps on going with the back and forth. That back and forth that occurs when you're on different sides of the line. And does she count on Dose, or does she fall back? Because the whole thing of the one thing that the writing theme in this is, and a woman's definition of control based on how men control versus how women control. And so the character's challenge for me when I was writing her, how does she learn to have the ultimate control, which is Dose, the good stuff, versus the I'm gonna crush you, sucker control, which is very, I define as machismo. But it's been all about, I married a Black Republican, and I want to talk about the customer voting service.
Okay.
I'm like feeling like it's all about us.
Although
it's about we.
We'll do the segue.
I'm sorry. Am I taking over? Sergei, I'm taking over. Sergei, stop me. Ah!
You know what?
Okay.
I'll stop you. I have one more question though, and anybody can answer this, because we can all, I think, thank you for that, Magaly. This is, you've made it very clear, it's about humanity, right? So we can all relate to this on some level.
Yeah.
Where are you? Anybody can answer in this story. If you had to implant yourself in this story, are you anywhere?
I'll say, I think my character, Jacques, is actually pretty close to who I am as a person. I think I'm always understanding of other people's perspectives. And at one point, actually in college, I was a registered Republican. It's because just because I was very much into the business one, just because I was very into like the business world, and I started to notice that I was coming across Republicans, especially in Penn State, where it's a like it's it's a different landscape, a Commonwealth state. So for me, it was like I've understood, and I think it's important that when he comes in, he's kind of questioning her, like it's not that big of a, even though it is, in our perspectives are our perspectives, right? So like only we know the things that we've been through that allows us to see the Democrats as being good and the Republicans as being bad. But then when you stand on the other side of that fence, the other side of that coin, they see Republicans as being the saviors and Democrats as being the ones that want to destroy the country. But then if you really look at the history of this country and you go back a couple hundred years, you'll see that Democrats actually wanted slavery, and Democrats were actually what Republicans are now. So like when you really understand it, you start to see that there's a million different ways you can, because I remember being friends with somebody that was that his parents owned a restaurant, and he saw Republicans as being, the saviors for society and for people. And we got in arguments and we this, that, and the third. But then eventually we just kind of chucked that to the side, because I still know that's not who defines him. And all the good things that he did, I would have never thought he was a Republican, because he was such a positive person in my life. So kind of to go and attest to what Tanya was saying about like your best friend who's 6 so to look at shared, to focus on how I see that person. And I think the role that I would play would be right along the line of Jacques, of being the person that's kind of like, well, see his side. Well, asking, well, does he know that you're a Democrat? Because if he doesn't know, then that, but I'll also say that I think in this world, I believe in unicorns, okay, bubble gums, and long walk to the beach. And I think that because he already cut off all his friends and his people, and because he was so willing to marry this woman who he loved, and he already fell in line with the permission and everything, that eventually they will get back together. It might be a little 3-day getting stuff off their chest, Juan, but eventually they'll get back together.
That, and as a segue, I'll just say I too believe in unicorns and bubblegum and rainbows, and I believe that we can live in a world where people can shed their labels and still have conversation, because conversation is okay. We do not all have to agree, and nobody is completely clean. That's my editorializing. Okay.
Yes. One more thing about talking about where people are in the place. Sarah was Carrie, what's her last name?
Carrie Shaw.
Carrie Shaw, how could I forget? So just shout out to Sarah. That beautiful voice was Sarah. And I think you're so right. This play is a reflection of where we are right now in this election with the question, can we come together?
Yeah.
Are we able to come together?
We have to. We have to. We there's no choice in the world. We have to. Like, people have to be able to, at the very least, have civil conversation.
Exactly.
I believe it can happen. The customer voting service. I love futuristic things. Like, it's just sort of like, what can we take away from this piece about the act of voting? What do you take away from this piece about the act of voting?
Its value.
What about its value? That is valuable, or?
The extent of how valuable it really is. I mean, if you really come to think about it, people have given their lives, you know, to be able to vote, to have the right to vote, you know, like, you know, like, and it's an issue that spans not just, you know, for a few years. It spans the entire history of this country. People that to those people. So you have a you know, clashing fight, and I think what it focuses here in the play is how valuable the vote is. The vote is that valuable that she was willing to end the marriage, to keep this guy chained up for 12 days, to prevent him from voting, because his vote is that powerful.
Oh, that's true, but we were on the customer voter service. But that too.
I'm sorry.
That's true. Right, because they're both about, right, the act of voting, right? So, okay, but you've provided, thank you so much, you provided the segue, second segue, right? What can we take away from this play about the act of voting? But you know what, you even though you said that, I'm thinking about Jarvis's character. Jarvis, he was a millennial, and he said, we don't vote. So not everybody agrees. So,
yeah. I think it's really interesting, just to piggyback off what he said right now. I think, it's an interesting boat. I mean, I can't speak for every millennial, but I think we're in this situation where a lot of us, right, we all have the ability to vote. We all have the right to vote, but a lot of us didn't do the work of having to fight for those rights. And a lot of us have received the current government that we know, and we feel like, well, why would I vote when this is the government that's giving me all of this? Like, what is that going to change at this point? Which isn't necessarily like taking in everything, but I think you have a lot of people that are like, well, things are the way they are, and people have been able to vote for forever, so why would I vote now? And you have people, and then like thinking about getting to 2040, and you have a young person who's like, well, because when you were young people, you didn't vote, we're now in this position. So it's like, right, considering how important it is and the different viewpoints that people have on how important it is based on what time they are existing in, I think is interesting.
That's a great point, Jarvis. Can I ask you a question though? Do you think the perception that voting doesn't have power, that one vote won't make a difference, subconsciously caused, because I felt like that was me when I was younger. Do you think that somehow plays on the mind of a millennial to not want to go out and vote because of this perception that your vote doesn't count?
Definitely. I think it's a thing of like, why do it, right? Like I think it's an interesting place that we're in, because there's so much information being thrown at you all at once these days, right? And I think as a millennial, you're able to see everything that's going on. You're able to see everything that's wrong. And I think people are like, there's so much that's wrong. I have one vote. Everything that's wrong can't be cured with my one vote. And I think that's a lot of the thinking that a lot of millennials have, is like, why are these people so pressed on getting me to vote when they were here before and they could vote, and this is the world we're living in? So it's like, why do I need to do it myself? But I think, yeah, it's short-sighted, and it's not taking in the full scope of things. Because I mean, without anyone going to do it, it's the same cycle, right? So.
Yes, Tanya, you want to say?
I know, I'm such a, like, I'm in school. You know, both of you bring up an interesting point is, you know, I was always taught the value of vote because it really meant that I could actually have voice. And something that even ties to being able to just vote is also civic duty. And I think that our country on a whole has lost sight of how to be active in their communities, active in their homes, in their schools, and on a local level. And people have really lost sight of it. So for me, when I think about how important it is, and when I know people in my own life who are not millennials, who don't want to vote because they have that privilege, and don't understand that the vote is not just for them, it's for all of us as a community. And I think that until we figure out how we do that, I think, Juan's play really brings up a host of questions, but it also is, this is where we might be 20 years from now, because people were not taking it seriously enough. So then we had to make and create laws that force people to do it. Because look at our moment right now.
Mm.
Yeah, Juan, one of the things that I was really interested in about this play is that, by placing this younger person in a coma and then fast forward, right, all this information that's coming from Tanya's character, it really, I think, feeds into what younger people are feeling right now. I mean, I know we're all saying I vote, and I think voting is important, but I don't remember what age is millennial. I have 2 young people living in my house, so all we talk about is voting and these things, and I get an earful and the real perspective of what the young people think. Okay, I will tell you that. And one of the things that was interesting about your play is that the way Lonnie was speaking, I think that's how young people hear it. It's just a lot. To us, it might seem, well, simple. People fought for a vote. You do this. For them, not so much. And the fact that you made it in 2020, 2020, think about what has been lost and I think you really tapped into it. Young people have lost. They have not graduated. I know in my house, no graduations, no anything that marks from childhood to adulthood. Now they can't even go to school. I have one who's at home, college. All she was thinking about was going to college. For us, it might seem like, but for them, this is a mess, a hot mess. So we talk about civic duty. Look, we talk about people that even their grandparents. My father walked to cast his second vote for Barack Obama, and he was like dying of cancer. And they hear that. But Juan, what were you trying to get us to think about the act of voting? Or
heavy. I already feel the question coming down. I'm gonna be one of those. I want people to just be educated with what their actions are. I'm not 100% comfortable with being like vote. I'm not 100% comfortable with telling people how to do and what to feel. I think sort of partially as an artist, I should create a piece and put actors in it and make you decide. Don't go down there because Juan told you so, because Conch Shell told you so. That's not gonna do nothing for the country, right? Because then you could go and put the vote in and then not do crap and sit home and lay in your bed all day. That's not. So I'm really a firm believer of not playing down to the audience, and I feel like Mike Pence, right? I feel like I'm dancing around your question with a fly in my head. I'm not trying to do that. I swear to God, I'm not trying to do that. But I really do feel honestly that I just want people to absorb 2020. I just want them to absorb 2020. And I want
that's the ultimate work, right? You're doing the ultimate work. You're doing the artist's job,
And that's how I feel. Like, absorb 2020 before you do whatever it is you feel like you're gonna do. I need you to absorb 2020. Really, because I see a lot of, I'm sorry, Cynthia, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But I see a lot of like these, like, I can't wait for 2020 to end. Oh, this and that. It's like, I need you to absorb 2020. And I need you to really breathe it in and take it in. See where you are now, what you want, where you come from, and make a decision. Whatever it is in life and vote, whatever it is. So that's sort of how I see it. That's a very long answer to your question.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Yeah, Tanya.
So I want to know, from the people in the play and Juan and our director. So I want you guys to tell me who you think won the 2020 elections that led to 2040 being as effed up as she described, and having 4, not 2 anymore, but 4 political parties, because each one has split. And apparently that 4 came from many before and went back to 4. So I would like to find out who you all think won, and go.
Well,
I dare not say his name.
Okay. All
But I
right.
think in Lonnie's world, that is what happened.
Okay.
That's why I think in that chunk where he's asking who won and she does not say, because she does not want to say, I don't want that to happen. So it may be an Imagine Land that can happen, and we actually have a winner in the way that I want. But in Lonnie's world, I definitely think that that's what happened, because for all the parties to split and to go crazy, I think shit went down.
Well, in the world of the play, and this leads into my next question, Mark, I think anything could have happened. I think anyone could have won, actually, because based on what you've said, Juan, and what you've set up, you're talking about writing something so that people have a voice and have power. You're writing a story. You want people to be mindful and they have power. So I in my mind, in the world of the play, there's people feeling disenfranchised on both sides. So whomever wins, it could be possible in the world of the play that people could have just said, you know what, I voted, but you know what, I don't like the way things are. And to go back to Magaly's play, and maybe we don't need a 2-party system. So that's one of the things I think is interesting that raises in that part, the play. But same question, in your imagination, all of you, what happens after the play ends? What choice does Mark make after the cameras go dark?
He votes for the one that keeps his medicine cheap.
Yes, he does. But we don't, what does that mean? I mean, really, yeah, I know. What do you think? I mean, what do you think he does? There's a lot of back and forth. And he's got to vote for somebody. Or well, I'm not even asking. There's a lot of possibilities. Does he decide he's not going to vote? He does mention about throwing away his vote. You think he votes?
I do think he votes, because Lonnie has made it very clear that he's going to get federal time. I mean, I think the stakes are high. I think in the spirit of the play, I should not divulge who he voted for. But I do think he makes a vote. I think he also, somehow I just have this feeling that he remains in touch with Lonnie somehow. I think there's a potential. I mean, she's like, he's just waking up after 20 years and she appears on this screen. Yeah. And yes, exactly. Beautiful, Tanya. And it makes my imagination go in that direction. It's an early contact of his. And what's great about Juan's play is he's written it so it covers all bases. All the different parties are talked about, and Lonnie goes back and forth, and Juan gives Jarvis's character Mark a real platform to ask anything, because he's coming from so far in the past. So it's like a huge arena for asking questions and getting answers on all sides.
Really?
But a gallon,
But
a gallon of milk is $1,000.
No.
I feel like he would be better off with federal time, because at least his meals would be paid for. Like,
is it cow's milk or not cow's milk?
Like, what kind of milk? A gallon of almond, like coconut milk?
Unfortunately, I have to head out soon, and I didn't get a chance to see Juan's. Hopefully, next time we could figure out a way so me and Tristan can maybe watch. But I didn't get a chance to see it. So It sounds great though. But everybody have a great night. Thank you so much. I loved working with you all.
Thank you.
And see you guys next round.
Thank you. One more question. And I'm glad, Susan, you brought up the interplay between Lonnie and Mark, because it does feel like there's some connection beyond, right? And I even saw it on the screen. It was so beautifully done. But so they do come from different places, and in some place they sort of overlap. Where are you, the collective you, in this play? Are you? And now I'm aware that it might be a spectrum, so you might not be one or the other. Are you closer to Mark or are you closer to Lonnie? Because I agree with Susan, they're asking a lot of questions. So it's really about the kinds of questions they're asking more than what they're saying. What are they unearthing? So where are you closest to? Are you closest to unearthing what Mark is saying or unearthing what Lonnie is saying?
That's a very difficult question.
It is. I love difficult questions. I don't like yes/no questions. We don't have to answer it. We don't. We could just sit here and go, wow, and think about it. We don't have to.
Well, it's kind of like the icons that circulate at the end of the play. You know, we could just watch those things.
Yeah, we could just, sometimes we don't have to answer. Sometimes we can just think about it. Yeah. And these plays were so rich that a lot of it is unearthed. I think we need to sit with anyway. Like if we came back 3 weeks from now, maybe we could we could talk about some of this. But if no one wants to answer that question or just want to sit with it, you want to answer it. Okay, Tanya's gonna answer it.
I do. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think for me was both, I could relate to both characters. But one, and I feel like today, when it came out of my mouth, it really impacted me, is the line where she says, you're asking if your vote counts, and that you are, is it worth it? And that whole line really made me go, oof. Yeah. Is the philosophy of my life based on who wins?
That's right. I love that line. I wrote that down, and actually, I noticed he doesn't answer it.
Yeah,
there's no answer. It just kind of beat and goes on. So that was my favorite line. I actually wrote that down, and I was just like, interesting, just to ponder. So.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have. So, did anybody else have anything else? Those were I could go on, but we can't go on.
We could. But we can't go on.
Not right now, we can't, but we can go on in our minds.
Offline.
I'm just grateful for the opportunity to ask these questions and to engage in conversation. I think
this was fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much for our artists sticking around, and thank you for Cynthia
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Thank you to Cosmos, because when we got your submission, Juan, it was like Sergei was like, Magaly, you guys talk? I'm like, no. I was like, oh my God. What?
It's interesting because I don't really when I write whatever, I'm gonna try to be real quick. When I write whatever, that's usually in the background, in the foreground. I don't put that in the front in my work. And this is like the first time I have. So I think it's really just a matter of several years of frustration in this 20-minute piece. So I think you just got me at the right time. So it was. Yeah.
Well, I hope that we all will keep what we learned and what we are going to learn going forward in this series in our hearts as we go forward. And I'm gonna engage in some dose, because I think
yes,
I think the dose is this. I always need a daily dose of dose.
A daily dose of dose.
Get that dose, girl.
That's right.
That dose.
And vote, everyone, everywhere vote.
Everyone vote.
Please.
Everywhere vote.
Yes.
And do join us back here next Friday. I'm going to plug it on October 16th, 9 p.m. Eastern for Program B of Blue Light Series. And we're going to have The Arithmetic of Memory, written by Gretchen Suarez Pena, directed by Tisha Duncan, and I Saw Jesus in Toa Baja, written by Nelson Diaz Marcano and directed by Kat Yen. For more information and to learn more about the company, visit us at Conch Shell Productions. And then if our artistic director wants the final word.
I feel blessed by this amazing opening night, and I'm looking forward to the next 3 weeks. And get the word out, people. This is some work, y'all. This is some amazing, beautiful inspiration that will touch the hearts and minds of our society when we need it the most, which is ultimately the goal, right? Art that awakens. Thank you.
Thank you, Magaly.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. It was great, everybody.